Hi, Antonio. What was your first computer?
Oh, gee, my first computer. Easy. Commodore 64.
Oh,
With
yeah,
tapes. With tapes. I
of
didn't
course.
have enough money to buy the floppy,
Yeah.
so I had the tape drive. And then a couple of years after, I bought, and I still remember the name, the Power Cartridge. So I had a Commodore 64 with
W-
64
Wait,
Ks of
wait a
RAM.
second. Now the first technical question, because you said you had the data set. Was it the original one from Commodore?
Oh, yeah.
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 What I remember right now, I started with Static Spectrum, and I didn't have the original one. So what I did is I refurbished the my music set, which was a mono set, And the problem is, what I remember right now, there was one head, and you had to adjust the head with a screwdriver. Otherwise, the computer wouldn't understand the noises. So this is what this was the first time during the entire podcast series I remember that. So okay, so what you did with the computer? Of course, as I know you, there was no fun. You just started in assembly, right?
No, actually,
this
it's funny.
was joke.
No. But with the Power Cartridge,
yeah,
with
but
this
with the
famous
what is the
Power
64?
Cartridge,
What was your first action with the 64?
well, that was the way I started computing was a bit like I saw the light.
Yeah.
I was 13 years old. And with my school, with my school teacher, we went to a computing exhibition,
Mhm.
and there was these guys with computers, and they asked me to type my name. So I was looking at the keyboard, going, "What? ANTO?" It took me a bit of time, and then nothing happened. And he said, "Now press this key," and it
Mhm.
was the enter key, and the computer said, "Hello, Antonio." And I kid you not, I was amazed how intelligent is this computer to
Okay.
know my name. And everything started like that. Then I did little jobs to save a bit of money. And a few months after, I bought my Commodore 64, and I started with BASIC.
So
And then,
I completely underestimated you. So what I thought is that you started with gaming,
well, I started with BASIC,
Yeah.
but at the time there was a magazine, a paper magazine called Commodore 64 Mag or something like that. And can you imagine? It was paper,
Mhm.
Pages of paper with thousands lines of code, of
Mhm.
basic code.
Mhm.
And I spent hours, days, weeks, and months typing every month. It was a monthly newspaper. And every month I was typing thousands of lines of basic,
Mhm.
and mostly for games,
Mhm.
small games like the Snake and
Yeah.
Pac-Man like and stuff like that. So, yeah, I was gaming, but I was writing my games. And of course, as you can imagine, after writing thousands of lines of BASIC, well, it doesn't work. So,
Yeah.
the more fun was debugging. And at the time, which is, I don't want to seem like an oldie here, but I am. The only interface was the screen and the keyboard, and when you pressed off, that was it. If you didn't store it on a tape, you had lost everything forever. There was no hard drive included or whatever. So, yeah, this is how I started with BASIC, and then with this Power Cartridge, I moved into assembly.
So you didn't start it with ready-to-use games, like you could load from tape. I don't know, winter games or whatever.
It was late because I had spent all my money buying my computer, and and at the time, going to a shop and buying a game on the tape was expensive.
Yeah.
So there was only a few people around me with computers. So sometimes we could swap and copy tapes. I had one friend who had drives, floppies, and I was, completely pissed off because I had tapes. So we couldn't exchange things.
Yeah.
So I would buy a game once in a while, but it was expensive for me at the time.
So I'm impressed. So this is actually what you also learn a lot, just typing all the stuff from the magazine. I also tried to do that, but it never worked in my case. And I had no idea how to debug the stuff. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And you remember BASIC? You remember BASIC? A little bit. You know what REM is? REM. RAM.
Remark.
Yes.
Remark.
This is comment.
Yeah.
What I
comment.
thought, how the games are working is the first time I saw BASIC and it's simple. I thought that with the REM, with the RAM, you have to create an ASCII art, So you write RAM and then smiley or whatever, and then I ask everyone how to get into the next page, because I thought this is like the animation, that I will get like 60 frames per second. So I have to design everything like this, and no one understood me. It's like all the programmers are stupid. They cannot get the easiest thing. It's like, what you would like to do? Why you need the next page? This I thought you are designing the games like they is with the pixels, which are asterisks or dots or whatever, right? And the next,
I could,
yeah,
because I had a few friends with the Commodores, but they were only into gaming, and I was into typing code.
Mm-hmm.
And one good trick to impress them, I would go to their place and play with them on the computer, and I would say, wait, and I would type 10 space go to 10, and the computer will just loop, and they will go, oh, what have you done?
Yeah.
And the only way was to switch it off.
Yeah. Now I ask the pro question. You remember go sub?
Yes.
This was my pro tip.
Go subroutine.
Yeah, this is what I learned. This was the beginning of object orientation, or almost. Yeah, you can jump somewhere and come back. So come back. So this was then you can refactor your program, and nothing was screwed up because the line number still worked. So exactly.
With the Power Cartridge, you had a fantastic refactoring capability.
Before we start with the Power Cartridge, what I never heard about, but with the C64, what was the most impressive basic application you wrote on it?
Oh, games. And also I remember I impressed a lot of my friends because I developed a game that was a few years after, I think. I developed a game where I still remember I created a database, with countries and capital cities. And so I spent days typing all the countries and all the capital cities, and the computer would ask you, what is the capital city of? And that's when I started to say, hey, Paris with a capital P and a lower P should be the same. So I was doing, tricks, trimming and lowercase, and again, I could impress my friends with that. And I would spend hours with them playing this game. What is the capital city? So I think now I forgot a little bit about it, but I think I still know a few capital cities of unknown countries out there.
Oh, perfect. So I will also have to write, the software with Java right now to be better with the capital cities. Du is the German. But in the episode 80 with Bastian Sperhacke, this is from Otto, he did similar program as you, but he was smarter. He has a sister, and he convinced the sister should type for him. And what? And this was not capital city. He wrote, "Who wants to be millionaire?" And all the text was written by sister, and he was just responsible for if else.
No, unfortunately, I didn't have an assistant.
Not assistant, a sister. This was
a sister. Sorry,
assistant.
I had a sister, but I wonder if she could have typed that. Good point.
Yeah, very good. Okay, and then the Power Cartridge came, which I'm really already curious what it was. What is a Power Cartridge?
Yeah, it was a little piece of plastic that you would plug behind your computer.
Okay.
And it will give you 60 Ks of RAM extra.
Okay.
So, I had a 64, now it's plus 16 Ks. We are talking about Ks. But there was a lot of tools. And one tool was you could type in assembly. And for BASIC, there was different tools. And one tool that I was using all the time is when you write in BASIC, you go line number 10 and you write something, and 11 and you write something, and 12. And of course
20. You have to use 10, 20, 30, This is 10, the 20, naming 30. Conventions. Yeah.
And at the end, I was doing 100 and 200 and 300.
Yeah.
And with the Power Cartridge, it could renumber all the lines with all the go-tos, and that was fantastic.
So incredible.
I didn't have any problem anymore. I would type, and when I needed to introduce a few lines, I would go renumber. It will renumber all the go-tos and all the go-subs and all the everything, and wow.
This is incredible. This is actually right. This is like a danger for Java, right? Because now we can run BASIC in the cloud with automatic line renumbering service by Amazon AWS.
That's a cool function.
Yeah. then I know what Power Cartridge is, because what I forgot about, C64 had a cartridge support, right? So you can stick, and this was the cartridge, like a dongle. And I think there were games or whatever, and there was a Power Cartridge. Okay.
Exactly.
And how you learned assembly?
Again, throughout these magazines, but I wonder if it was on the Commodore 64 magazine or not. But I remember one of my first games in assembly, first game, was to draw a ball. I'm not going to say a 3D ball, but, with a bit of shade.
Yeah.
And it will just bump around randomly throughout
this was like, you remember Arkanoid? This was a game with a ball. There's a wall in a ball, and this was like a tennis or squash. And this was called, I think, Arkanoid or something like this. And this was also a nice game in C64, I remember.
In assembly, I was doing little things.
But wasn't it hard to move from basic to assembly? I mean,
I think it was, because at the time with basic I was doing amazing stuff all the time. But I think assembly wasn't about doing more or better. It was trying to understand how the computer would work. And, again, it was these puzzles that developers have in their mind. I wanted to know what was inside. I wanted to know. And when I understood that assembly was closer to the computer than basic, then it was just like, I wanted to fix the puzzle. I wanted to know about, the memory and putting stuff in the memory and popping up and popping down. And it was more about that. I could see that I wasn't as productive in assembly as basic, but it was more to know what was behind, what was inside. A lot of developers, when they are young, they do Legos and then do, all the little greedy, tiny things. And I think basic was that.
Okay.
Assembly.
But you
how the computer works.
You understood in basic pick and pokes. This would drove me crazy. The pick and poke.
Yeah, I remember that I was doing amazing stuff with pick and pokes, with spritz and
okay, but then you knew, but then you had to the map of the memory of the computer, right? Then okay, because for me it didn't make sense, because what I couldn't understand, how the developers know what happens if you write something like 5,255, and years later I found out in a book, there was a book where there was the memory map, so you saw the graphic area and the sound. So okay, this is easy, but someone have to tell you, without that.
That was this magazine, the Commodore 64. I still remember there was, in the magazine, there was this little grid, and you would draw, these little squares, compute, and that will give you, so you will draw, I don't know, a stick man. And you will compute line by line, 1 plus 2 plus 4 plus 8 plus blah, blah. And you will get your spritz. So then you will just go pick 12, 64, 12, and then it will appear on the screen. And I was like, wow, much better than Java FX.
Yeah, a lot better. The Johann Voss he's fiddling for years, and it still doesn't work like that, right? We will have to cut it out. Otherwise, I will have to do a podcast with him, afterward. Exactly. It was the beginning of Java FX. Way easier to understand, because, pick and pokes would be more portable, probably even. Nice. So, Power Cartridge. So, this already, okay, I can imagine. So, you are actually the natural born programmer. And another guest on the show, you will never know who it actually is. You know Tanya, right? Tanya Obradovic.
Yeah.
She's very like you. She started hacking right away. It's like, this is incredible. Yeah. I just enjoyed that. It's like, and now you're a manager, so what you can do? But she hacks like crazy.
Yeah, when I was a kid, very young, like 6, 8 years old, the best present that my family could give me was a dead TV screen or a dead radio, or a dead something dead. And I would spend hours with a screwdriver, with unplugging everything, all the cables. I would spend hours. Each time my uncle would come with a old dead TV or radio, I would spend hours and days unscrewing everything, cleaning everything, hoping it will work again.
But it never worked, right?
Obviously, of
hey,
course not.
is it still the case? Because my basement is full of electronic. If I will meet again in Paris, I will come with the car the first time.
30 years have passed, and now when people look at me with all my Macs, iMac Pro and Mac, and each time someone says, "Oh, can you help me on Linux or can you help me on Windows?" I know, no,
exactly.
they just no. I think I went from unscrewing radios to building my Linux machines to I don't want to do that anymore. I use a Mac.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, well, I take it to the Apple store.
Yeah. And they also have no idea what to do, and they forward it, to the only hacker at Apple, probably.
They give you a brand new one.
Okay. Nice. So we spent some time, with the Power Cartridge. What happened after Power Cartridge?
Well, then I went to uni doing an IT degree. So, in France, you go what we call high school, and then college. Well, and I was doing math, like a lot of people maybe. And then very, very quickly, I went to IT. And then I think at the time I had a 486. I went to a 386, 486. I was doing Pascal. I was doing stuff like that. I think the first years of uni were a bit disappointing because we were doing algorithms and stuff like that, algebra, and I think I already knew that throughout the years. So I was a bit disappointing. The first years at uni, we were not doing gamings. We were doing algorithms. And I was, wow, I've seen that before. And at the end of my master, I actually had some fun doing a transpiler in Prolog. So my university was the creator of a language that you've never heard of. It's called Modulog, which was a mix of Prolog and Modular. So it was a French uni who thought they had invented a great language called Modulog. And at the time, we were doing a lot of Prolog, so logical programming. And they wanted to move as many lines of code in Prolog to Modulog. So I actually created a transpiler from Prolog to Modulog, two useless languages, but I had a lot of fun.
In which programming language you wrote?
Prolog.
In Prolog.
So it was written in Prolog, and I was transpiling Prolog lines of code into Modulog, and that was a lot of fun.
Actually, I wanted to learn Prolog because my impression was back then that it is something to do with AI. I was fascinated by AI, and Prolog was like the beginning of that, right?
Yeah. It was. Once you write all your assertions and everything, you could ask questions. I still remember the very first exercise in Prolog that we had to write. It was a unicorn and a lion. And I don't have the things right, but, the unicorn lies on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday.
Okay.
The lion lies on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Everybody tells the truth on the other days. When you ask the lion, what's the day today? The lion answers, it's Thursday. It was something like that.
Okay.
And it was, how am I going to solve that? Of course, it's not if it's Monday and the unicorn lies so it was fantastic. It was completely different from what I'd seen with BASIC and Pascal and all the other languages. So Prolog was a bit of fresh air, completely new. Of course, I only did that 1 year. Then I never used Prolog in my entire life.
But this is very similar to Drools, right? Drools from JBoss?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, incredible. So your progression from languages was you started with BASIC,
assembly,
and then Prolog.
Pascal, a lot of Pascal. I actually did a bit of COBOL, believe it or not, to show you how old I am. And
What
and
did it impress you
Prolog.
with Pascal? Pascal, I think, was between your school and university, right? Something
Yeah, it
interesting in
was at
Pascal?
uni. Yeah, it was. It's funny. It doesn't. I
Okay.
think. I think I started with basic, so it's strong in my memory.
Mhm.
And Pascal was at uni, and as I told you, at the uni at the beginning, it was a bit boring.
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
enjoy it much. And I finished with Prolog, which was a bit of hoo-ha. I even remember doing a bit of Ada,
Yeah.
but that was it.
Okay.
And then I started to work with C and C++.
After university?
Yeah. Because I was doing, of course, at uni, you always do a bit of C and C++.
Yeah.
And my very first job was in C++.
What you did there?
It was interesting. It was quite interesting. It was a bit of a magic thing because I was working for a big telecommunication company,
Mhm.
and it was actually programming the chips of the of your SIM card.
Okay.
So it was quite interesting because we had to read the specifications of the chip.
Mhm.
And then the business will tell you, well, now, on my chip, I want to store contact numbers, names, and phone numbers. Again, it was a time when there was no cloud, no internet, so you would store your contact names on the chip of your phone rather than on the phone itself, and stuff like that. So it was quite interesting because we were using two kind of chips. Gem Plus, which is a French company, and there's this German company who was doing chips at the time. I forgot.
Infineon.
No.
Okay.
Schlumberger, I think.
Okay.
Oh,
But it's a
well,
smaller
anyway.
one. Okay.
And so we had two chips,
Mhm.
two different chips, and we had to read the specifications and program them so they could so we will develop the software, and then this software in C++ would be stored in the chips by the manufacturer.
Mhm.
So it was quite interesting because on my desk I had plenty of chips readers and chip writers, and I was programming in C++ with my team, and we will burn the chip, see if it works. And I think it was kind of a read mostly kind of thing. So if you write too many times, then the chip will be dead. So we had thousands of chips on our desks, and again, it was kind of fun. And I think
Yeah, it
was
was
the
fun.
last.
It reminds me of C64 work. I mean, with
Yeah.
with the sprites and Power Cartridge. I mean, this is very very similar, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, to be honest, it was the last fun job I've ever done. And
Oh.
since then, my day-to-day life is taking data from a database, doing if then else, and putting data back into the database. And I think that's mostly what I've done throughout my life.
And you don't enjoy enjoying this anymore? Yes, you enjoy
yes,
it.
I do. Yeah, each time you give a talk, Adam, I love you because you always say, "Sorry, I don't work for sexy customers like Twitter, Google, or Amazon. I work for boring customers." And you say, "I work for boring customers, but hey, I quite enjoy it."
Yeah, but what I enjoy is simplify things, So if I impress my clients how simple and productive this is where fun starts. Because I think doing complex stuff is not a big deal. Also, I can learn new books and just apply whatever I see, and then in a shortest amount of time, it's going crazy complicated. But for instance, right now I have building a proof of concept with Kafka, Quarkus, and a little bit of SSE. And what I try to do, even simpler than the tutorials are, right? Because the Quarkus tutorials, the official ones, are not always the simplest. Okay, how to make it more straight with less dependency on Quarkus, you know me, right? With more, micro-profile stuff and API, and it works actually. And this is what I enjoy. It doesn't have to be, crazy use case. It can be a very simple use case and solved in a nice way.
Yeah, I think in our industry, there's half of the people who hate annotations and the other half who love annotations. I am part of the guys who love annotations because, as you say, I have a class. I put one annotation and it works thanks to the magic behind. So, like the more simple code, the better.
Okay, what happened after the only fun job with burning, 100s of sim chips? What happens after that?
Then I moved to Europe Car the rent-a-car company. And that's when I discovered Java, and that's when I discovered WebLogic. So we are back in '98 now. So from C, C++, I discovered Java in '97, '98. And at Europcar, there was this huge Java project. And at the time, there was not a lot of people doing Java. And, I'm in France, and you might not know, but France had an amazing piece of tool called the minitel, which was hundreds of years before the internet. So France had these little computers that every French person had at home, and you could surf the French web. It wasn't free. It was expensive. It was, characters only. So there was no, but there was from the 80s. So the planet had nothing, and France had this thing called the minitel from the 80s. It was huge.
Germany had the same. It was called BTX. It was. Was it compatible? Because this BTX, you could have, I remember at the very beginning, I had two modes with the telecom, the internet mode or the BTX mode. And with the BTX, you could even with ASCII characters, interact with your bank and do stuff. And very similar to that, what I remember was teletext. Teletext was television set read only, but you get additional information in your television where you can look up, information. This was actually fun. I really enjoyed the teletext. I was completely fascinated by it. But this BTX was later. It was 1998. This is how I got the access to it because I got the modem, right? But I have no idea about Minitel. So this was like...
So the Minitel it's exactly what you say. You would go into this little box, open it, type a phone number. It will hook into your bank account, and you will just type. There was no mouse, there was nothing. So just to say that the Minitel was huge in France, huge. You could buy a train ticket. You could see the timetable of your flights. We are back in the 80s and 90s. Huge, huge, huge. The problem was when the internet arrived throughout the planet in the 90s, France said, boff. It will never work. The Minitel is the future. So the planet was slowly moving into the internet, and France was still locked into the Minitel. And so I was doing a Minitel stuff, before. And when I arrived at Europcar in '98, it was to do Java. It was to do WebLogic. It was to do JSPs to go on the internet. And it was one of the very first companies in France because all the other companies were still doing and developing huge systems on the Minitel. So that's when I discovered Java and WebLogic and Java EE, 97, 98. And in 99, when this project finished, we were online on the internet doing Java WebLogic. I came back to looking for job opportunities. And that was the famous bug of 2000 coming. France was still hooked in the Minitel. And the only thing I could find was C and C++ jobs on the Minitel platform in 99. And I said, I don't want to do it anymore. And that's when I packed everything, left Paris, moved to London, where I lived for 2 years, and worked for a company called BEA Systems.
Wow,
so that's when I did. So that's when I worked for 2 years for BEA Systems on WebLogic. I arrived, it was WebLogic 3, and when I left the company, it was WebLogic 6.
But you still know what Tenga means, right?
Yes, Tenga was and the other name was.
I only know Tenga.
Oh no! There was another BA bought a transactional.
Tuxedo.
Yeah, Tuxedo. Yeah, thank you.
But the Tenga was the first name of the WebLogic, and this was. You know why? What it means?
Oh no.
This is the neighbor island of Java. What I remember.
Oh.
Yeah, see, there's some meta going on. Yeah, clever guys. So I really liked WebLogic. I just use WebLogic. I was always freelancer, so I never worked for a company. But WebLogic, I use it a lot, and it was really easy to use and very fast. What I really enjoyed the startup time and the developer experience. It was best. until BA8. After this, it just got worse and worse. But until 8, it was just incredible.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You have to think that in 2001, 2002, I left the company in 2002.
Why?
With WebLogic 6. You really want me to tell you?
No, you can paraphrase if there's no political reasons or whatever.
Oh, no, personal reasons. Just, after London, after BA, I just moved to South America and traveled South America for nearly 1 year backpacking.
Nice.
Not doing IT, just enjoying.
But this was the best decision ever, right?
Oh, yes. It was, I was 30-something. So it wasn't like I finished studying, I was in uni, let's backpack with a friend and tour the world. No. I had already worked for more than 10 years. I knew what it meant. And I was 30-something when I was tired. I was physically tired in London because the city was big, the commuting was WebLogic was doing great. We were working like dogs, and after 2 years I was physically tired, and I went to see my manager and said, guys, it is fantastic, I love you all, but I've decided to move on. And before coming back to France, I took a 1 year off, and I just sold my stock options at BA and took the money and backpacked, bought a guitar, and I was touring South America. So cool. That wasn't IT, oriented at all.
Was something interesting happened? So one incredible story from 1 year. Can you share with us?
Oh, I think so. I arrived in Brazil because I had some friends, and then I went down Uruguay, Paraguay, Argentina, and then went up Bolivia and Peru, and I stopped there. I didn't go north. I think because of Brazil, I'm Portuguese, so I speak the language. I had some friends there, so I stayed there a few months. And the experience I had was, I was back from Europe. I had some money. I rented a flat by the beach. I was having a great life. And after a few weeks, I just got bored of doing nothing and lying on the beach and having coconut milk. So I started to work on a NGO for a favela. I was digging wells, believe it or not. There was this huge field. The project was to plant vegetables for this favela with 5,000 families. So that's roughly 20,000 people. And there was this huge field, and the NGO plan was to plant vegetables so the village could have a bit of food for free. So believe it or not, I was there in the mud. It was a huge field, and we had to irrigate it. So people said, well, then we have to dig some wells to have water. And I was, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
How? But just dig a hole on the ground. And I spent months, we had no technology. So it was basically, maybe there's some water over there. And we would dig for a couple of weeks. And after 5 meters deep, no, there is not. Let's move on to another place.
Okay.
It was crazy. It was mad. But I really enjoyed it because I spent fantastic moments with all those people. It was tough. We were talking about a favela 30 k's out of the city, with families who barely knew how to read and write, with kids selling drugs, getting killed once in a while. Tough life. It's not like that in Europe, nowhere. And it was great to spend moments with all those people, playing cards, drinking, talking crap and living life, and it was a fantastic moment. Throughout my journey, I met a lot of people. fantastic places, but I think that was in a human scale, that was fantastic because I had time. I stayed there for months, so I knew people. I would arrive in the morning in the favela, say hello to everybody, and then at night I would go to my fantastic flat in front of the beach. So I had these two lives. And yeah, that was a great moment.
But it's also probably also good for your fitness, right? Doing something outside. So, I mean, this is like right now, this was the Apple Health predecessor, right? So right now you have to pay money and you got it completely for free.
Oh, yeah.
You know how to motivate your children, right? So if you are good at school and you're good at university, if you learn multiple programming language, are able to write a transpiler, and be a top tier consultant for a company in London, financial, then one day, maybe, yeah, right, you will be able in Brazil to dig some holes in the mud, right?
It's funny because I have a few photos.
Okay.
Thank God I have a few photos of me there. And each time I show that to my daughter, she goes, look, you're full of mud. And I say, yeah, I'm digging a hole. So she's not impressed. She wants to go to uni, but not to end up in a muddy wall.
But maybe she can get, a virtual mud in Fortnite or somewhere. But you have to pay for it, for all the, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's incredible. So you came back from your journey. What happened then? Back to Paris?
Then I came back to Paris and then I went, I don't want to do C++ and Minitel anymore because we are in 2002 and France is still hoping that the Minitel will take.
Oh, okay. No.
That was mad. It was a bit of a mad time. France arrived late in the internet because of the Minitel. So in 2002-3, I came back in 2003 from South America. I was, but where is Java? Where is the internet? So I struggled a little bit, but then basically since 98, Europe car and then London and back from Paris, I've been doing Java and a lot of Java EE and a lot of internet. Now, of course, here we are in Paris 2021. Everybody is doing Java and everybody's on the internet. But 20 years ago, it was still a challenge because France had this idea that the Minitel will rule the world. But
I think it was a little bit later, and I guess 2006 or 7. I was in the project in Hamburg, and you wrote already the GlassFish book, I think.
Yep.
So this was 2005 or 6 or something like this, right?
2007. Because my first book, Java EE5, was written only in French.
Okay.
And then I got approached by A-Press, and I wrote the Java EE6 with GlassFish book, and that was 2007.
Okay, it was 2007. And in the project, there was a female developer, and she was great. And I wanted, they struggle a little bit with GlassFish. And I told her, okay, there is a great book, just you have to buy it. So who wrote that? I said, yeah, Antonio. So Antonio, is this the guy with the great hair? I say, yes. She immediately bought it, So just telling, you were very famous. I said, Antonio, is this the guy with the great hair? I was like, yeah, I believe so. And okay, then we buy it. He was.
And at the time, in 2007, I wasn't doing a lot of conferences. My very first conference was 2006 at DevOps Belgium for a fantastic, great framework called JUnit 4.
Yeah, wait a second. So between your coming back from Brazil or from South America to 2006, what you did then? So you spent your time on different projects. So you were a freelancer?
Yeah, but always around WebLogic. With the experience that I had,
okay.
I was doing a lot of WebLogic. WebLogic got acquired by Oracle, so there was WebLogic and GlassFish. As you said, I left BA with WebLogic 6. Then when I came back into working, I was still using a little bit of WebLogic 6, 7, and then these things started to be bloated.
Yeah, exactly.
And then GlassFish arrived, and I thought, wait a second, I've been doing WebLogic, but no, I was doing Java EE.
Yeah.
So now I can take my skills and move to a much faster, simpler platform. And again, I join you each time you do a talk and you said, look, you don't have to lose your entire skill set and do something completely different. And for me, moving from WebLogic to GlassFish was easy. And so I started to go into the conferences, DevOps Belgium. I did a few talks on Java framework, Java EE, blah, blah, blah. In 2005, I wrote this book on Java EE5. It was already with GlassFish. Oh, now I forgot. I have my book here, but I forgot. And yeah, Java EE6 with GlassFish. So in 2007, I was already a little bit involved in giving some talks. I was still doing a lot of Java EE, a little bit of WebLogic at work, more and more GlassFish. And that's how, then JBoss, etc., etc.
So you did Java EE because you believe in it, or you like that, right? So
I liked it because always remember the time, 2002. To be honest, as an internal of BA, we were looking at JBoss and laughing. What in 2002 JBoss was nothing. Open source. Open source means no money.
Yeah.
But we were laughing at BA. What is that? So Java EE, the open source was, this is a common language. I can build my skills on this platform. Most of the platform by 2006, 7, 8 was becoming more and more open source. So it was, hey, I have a language that is portable. I have a platform that is portable, and most of the runtimes are open source. What else? We are in 2007, 8, 9, 10. So I really thought Java and Java EE being the Esperanto of the Java toolkits.
Yeah, it's
look at this fantastic language. Yeah. Look at this fantastic language, runs everywhere. Look at this platform, runs everywhere. Look at the runtimes. Most of them are open source and free. Let's do a career out of it. And as you say, it's still the case.
Yeah, I think we met the first time at Java 1. It was probably 2008 or 2009, and we were moving to there was like an event. And we were with Alexei Pushkin, right?
Yeah.
On the boat or somewhere, so I remember. And Sausalito, right?
Sausalito.
Sausalito. Okay.
Yeah, on the other side of the bridge. Yeah, correct.
So I met you the very first time, and I was always curious what I actually did. This is why I do the podcast, because you I know you for 10 years or 12 years, but I only know that you wrote the book. And you somehow know Java EE very well, but know what's your history, right? And this is always fun. So this is why I do the podcast, because first we don't have to prepare, and then I learn actually what you did and know you better, right? By the way, you could enjoy the podcast with Mark Fleury. You know Mark Fleury? He created JBoss. I asked all the questions, and he applied at BA. So you have to listen to it. And this is the episode 98, how JBoss happened with Mark Fleury. So if you like, listen. Mark Fleury, I completely have different opinion after recording podcasts with him. He is incredibly good in physics, so you have to listen to it. So this is... Yeah,
I have an interesting story with Mark Fleury. Because,
tell me the story.
Because I created the Paris Java user group where you came a few years ago to give a talk, and it was our 3rd anniversary or the 2nd anniversary, I think. And Sasha was creating CloudBees. It was the very beginning of CloudBees, and I contacted Sasha and said, "Hey, do you want to come to our keynote? We are talking about the anniversary of the Paris Java user group. We are talking about 500 people for the entire evening. So do you want to come and give the keynote, and then we have technical content?" So Sasha said, "Yes, I'm coming." And a week or two before, he said, "Well, Antonio, I don't want to spoil, but I might be coming with a guest." And I was, okay, who is that guest? And 1 or 2 days before, Sasha sent me an email saying, "Okay, don't spoil it, but I'm coming with Mark because, he lives in Spain and he agrees to come with me on stage. So I'm giving the keynote, but then he will come on stage." And so the anniversary of the Paris Jug we were in this amphitheater. Sasha gave a keynote. Then Mark came and there was a question and answer. Then we had the entire talks. Then at 11 p.m. we hired a fantastic bus with lights and music, and we took all the speakers, including Sasha and Mark, and we went to a restaurant. We had great food, a lot of drinks, a lot of talks, and believe it or not, at 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm here outside in the streets. Mark is smoking. I'm a non-smoker, and we are at 4 o'clock in the morning in the streets of Paris after food, talks, drinks, talking. And that's when I realized that this guy was just a little Joe. For me, Mark was a god. And he was so easy to talk to, and he was such a friendly person. And
exactly.
Brilliant.
Because he was he joined task forces, special forces, so he was in the military.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, I knew that because I read way back, something about him, and he looks really fit. So I thought, he would complete different kind of a person, but he's really nice. So this is what really, you have to listen to the podcast. It's really fun. Because what I did at the end, I explained, the newest features of Whitefly and Quarkus, and he was amazed. And I said, hey, Mark, what do you have to do? You have to find some bugs, in Quarkus and Whitefly and watch the reaction of the developers, It's like, this is what I will do, right?
Be fine.
Yeah, this will
be a PR on Quarkus sent by Mark Fleury.
Yeah, everything doesn't work. You have to do it this way, right? So this would be nice. Okay, great. So you wrote the book, and the book was successful, right?
Yeah. At the time, for an IT book, it was successful. And then I wrote, so Java EE5 was the first one in French, then Java EE6 in English by A-Press, and then I updated with Java EE7 in English. We are in 2013. And each time I finish writing a book, I tell myself, no way, I will never, ever write a book again. But this time it was true, because with A-Press, we had a little bit of a dilemma. I wrote a blog about it at the time. It is another story. I love computers, but I have to be honest, I'm not a nerd. I'm more a geek. I love humans as the humanity, human beings. Good or bad, it's what we are anyway. And I have a fantastic human story that I received one day an email from an unknown student in Iran. This guy writes fantastic English, and his email that I copy paste with his authorization on my blog was basically, hello sir, I live in a country where I can't get your book. So I download it illegally. And because of that, I want to pay you back by reviewing your future book. And I was like, wow. I received this email out of the blue from Iran, a student in IT in a university of Iran. And then starts this amazing story with this guy called Yunus. I send him chapters from my book. He reviews with incredible detail. His English is perfect, much better than mine. He takes my code and said, you should do this, you should do that. And then comes this virtual friendship from me writing Java EE7, sending each time a chapter to this unknown student in Iran who sends me back, all these details, and I improve my book thanks to him. And so, before starting before printing the book Java EE7, I wrote an acknowledgement on my book saying, thanks to everybody, my mom, my kids, blah, 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 and thanks Yunus. And I explained the story of Yunus. Believe it or not, it's on my blog. When I received a month later the paper book, my Java E7 paper book, the page on Yunus is not there. So I sent an email back saying, why? What happened to this page? And A-Press tells me, well, the student is from Iran, and the United States bans everything related to Iran. I was shocked. I was in tears.
But maybe Apress was not allowed to.
Yeah. Oh, yes, of course.
But this was not the fault of Apress, right?
Oh,
I guess.
of course. It's the United States of America who said, we don't want to do anything with Iran. And of course, Apress follows the rules. And I understand it perfectly. That's when I said, okay, now if I write another book, I will publish it myself, which I've been doing.
Now I tell you another story. It's very similar to yours. I had a contract with a very famous publisher to write another book about Java E, I guess, or patents or whatever. It was actually, this was my green book is real world Java E patents. It was, the idea was to write for them. And I wrote the first chapter and the feedback was basically scrap, which could be, right? So this was more or less, and this is wrong. And I say, why? And the explanation was, they know that EJB came before applets. And I said, this is impossible. I was completely confused because I really admire the publisher. This is this is not Apress. It is everyone knows the publisher, right? And I said, okay, but it's impossible. I said, the editor was in a secret meeting at Sun, and they talked about EJBs before applets. And I say maybe, but I have no such secret knowledge. I mean, I mean, for me, it is not understandable, right? And then they canceled the contract, and then it turned out back then he was forced to cancel the contracts about Java books because they were out of fashion. Then I said, okay, but this was the way how they canceled me, So, and then I understood because I really admired or still admire the publisher. Actually, today I bought 8 books from them, so I still.
Still admire them.
Yeah, I get the 8 books from them, but I still like them. So. It's always a single person story, It's not like the fault of the entire company. So you have to.
Yeah.
And then I went to several publishers, and they laughed at me. So Java, no one does Java anymore. So this was a strange period, And I said, okay, then I will write the book by myself. Because I believed, and this was the best-selling book ever. This is the green book, Real World Java E Patterns, and I wrote it in my way. I hired an editor in the USA, so they edited everything for me, and I got so many responses and actually positive, right? Everything was positive, and now see what happens. After 1 year, the book was incredibly popular. Self-published book. I got emails from the same people whether they could republish the book again. And I say, what I can tell? I mean, this is impossible. I tell the first guy, I don't know whether they remember, you said this is crap. This is exactly the same text. Yeah, but now, it's changed, times change. We would like to republish this. Then I got subsequent requests from another publisher where I also said they would really like to work with me. And I always, send the old emails. Sorry, but I learned something. This is so I had very, very similar experiences. And the problem I have, it is not very predictable. So if I write something for myself, I know I can publish it immediately. If I write something for a publisher, I really don't know what happens, right? Whether they and this is too much stress, I would say, and this is less fun, right?
But it's interesting because this story really pissed me off. I wrote a blog about it.
Yeah, I saw that, right?
And it's you actually that you indirectly. I remember we talked about it at the Sun, I think, when we met, or maybe before. But I asked you a few questions about self-publishing. So it's really when I saw you with your book being self-published that I went, hey, why not? And it's funny because I met Vlad a couple of years ago in Paris, and we had a little chat, and he said, it's thanks to me and my post that he also self-published. So there was, I think you triggered a big chain of self-publishing.
Okay, nice. That's actually incredible. So, and this was just, like, okay, then I just would like to have fun. Let's have fun. I will do it by myself. And I learned a lot, and small things. I was not sure whether I'm allowed, to use a particular font, for instance, right? Legally. So this was a huge story. So, okay, then I bought one. So I called Adobe. So can I use your fonts? We are not sure. Can I buy one for a book? Sure. So they give me one, and I bought for 300 euros a font, and now this is special font belongs to me on a book. So problem solved, So this was like,
the Adam Bian font.
Yeah, no, I forgot, but I still use it sometimes, so it just can. Yeah, but it would be great, So the lightweight font. Okay, incredible. So you started with Java E, and then you told me you just do Spring, right?
Yeah. I think, as you know, Java EE 8 wasn't great. Java
Was not great, or
wasn't great. It wasn't a very great story. It was the moving from Java EE7 to Java EE8. I was in the expert group. There was nothing happening. No major updates. Oracle had taken over, didn't know what to do with Java EE. So there was a bit years. We were more talking about licensing and lawyers than technical stuff. It was boring. And except for JBoss. But even JBoss EAP, when you compare with Thorntail, it was also a bit heavy, of course, and nothing compared with WebLogic or WebSphere today. So I think I just got disillusionized. I put a lot of energy. I was part of the expert groups for many, many years on my spare time as an individual. So... and I think the Java EE8 drama was a bit. I thought I'm getting out of here, so I left all the Java EE JCP stuff.
Wait a second. You were an individual contributor. How you did it? Because I'd also tried to contribute, but for me it was even impossible to read all the emails. It was incredible. Some people wrote emails. They were like 2 pages long, and for me it was okay. I just cannot keep up. So if I would dedicate 2 hours of my time per day, it was still not enough to read the entire thing and contribute back. So how you did it actually?
I think the very first time I got involved in Java EE6, the spec lead was Roberto Cininci, who died recently, and I think it was my best time in Java EE. Roberto was a fantastic spec leader. There was a lot of information, but not too much. And it was on one spec, Java EE6.
Okay.
And then I thought it was so easy that I went, yes, let's go to Java EE7, EJB 3.1, and JPA 2. And I was there, I can do it. And how I could handle it was by dropping JPA. As you say, I was receiving too many emails. The JPA, Gavin King, was still involved. He was sending emails 10 pages long on the criteria API. And so I had to drop JPA. So if you read the JPA 2 specs, you see my name. But I only stayed a few weeks, and I sent an email to the spec lead saying, "Oops, sorry, I can't handle the load." So I was on Java EE7 and EJB, and then Java EE8 and Java EE8 was the total, opposite. I think in 1 year we received 2 emails.
Okay.
It was really the end of the Java enterprise platform on Oracle.
That's interesting, because I have complete different perception. For me, it was I was completely not interested in Java 8. Say because Java 7 and Java 6 are good enough, and I couldn't believe, regardless what happens. Even now, let's assume the brightest people from all industry will try to improve Java 6. I don't think you can improve it that much. What you can do, you can add maybe some, but what you can do, right? It's really hard to. What you could do, unify everything. Make it a little bit more. But this is not like invention. This is refactoring. So refactoring There are small things which you can refactor, but refactoring is always boring. At the end of the day, you get producers from CDI and producers from JAX-RS named differently, maybe, but this is not like huge innovation or productivity boost. It's just a small improvements. Yeah. So it will remain boring. It is even more boring than it was in Java 8. So what you could do, of course, maybe add, like communication RPC protocol with gRPC or something like that, which standardize the stuff. Maybe like Corba, but more modern, something like this. We have, but this is not a lot to do, right? The problem is everything is invented, I think.
In the Java EE landscape, Java EE8, and I remember I was part of the CDI expert group, and I was talking a lot with Antoine Sabot-Durand, who was the spec lead lives next to me, so we had a lot of lunches and brainstorms, and that's when I realized that the politics were much stronger than the technical aspect in Java EE8, because as you say, Java EE8 is good enough. Of course we can add more things, but it's different. It's side by side, not. So the micro profile, there's new specifications coming, along. So the idea was, part of the expert group was exactly what you say, was refactor Java EE8. What if everything in Java EE is a CDI extension? What if, like Quarkus today, what if the Java EE core is a thin layer and you can put plug and play JPA or servlets or EJBs? So there was this idea of uniforming the platform, saying that CDI was mandatory for all the specs, that all the specs would be implemented as a CDI extension. So Java EE8, in part of a little part of the expert group, was refactoring Java EE8, and of course, it doesn't sell. It doesn't sell.
Because the problem is it was good enough. So you tell the Whitefly, it was, for me, I always picked the full Whitefly. I never played with the web profile or never with a thumbtail because it was fast enough. But what's interesting, what you told me, that the Whitefly was a little bit slow. Was back then Spring faster?
No, what I was saying is JBoss EAP was slower than Wildfly Swarm Thorntail. So that's why.
But you switch to Spring. But I would assume there should be no difference between Spring and Whitefly, right? In startup time.
No. Yeah. Well, if I moved to Spring, is first of all, I was a little bit pissed off with the Java EE8 drama, and I could see that the refactoring was impossible. So I stopped wasting energy on Java EE, and plenty of customers were doing Spring. So I thought, hey, I know Java EE, let's learn something new, because I wasn't a very, very big Spring user. A lot of people were doing Springs. They were talking Spring all over. I knew a little bit about Spring, but not too much. And then that's when I moved with Spring, not because of love and passion, more because I was disappointed with Java EE, and the industry was doing Spring, and I thought, well, let's learn something new. Everybody talks about it.
Funny fact, I never actually started a Spring project yet. So I only, in one time, someone asked me for Java E review, and they didn't knew that they're using Spring. So I got the Spring project, and then help them, that there were some memory issues, but which were not caused by Spring. This was how they developed the application. So I helped them from Java perspective. So this is how I saw, production Spring code. And in another semi-funny story was recently, last year or 2 years ago, was Spring Boot. They also asked me for a review, and for me it looked great. So it was lean and pragmatic. So it was no interfaces and mappers. It was just straight to the point. And I say, yeah. From my perspective, it looks actually good. And they say, okay, but we are going away from Spring anyway. It's like, why? Because I mean, for just keep Spring. It looks nice. And the problem was, which was I never actually until then found that this is the true difference between microprofile Java E and Spring. What they told me is they are using Spring Boot 1.4.2 or something. And they found security problems there. So the security scanning didn't work, and they had to migrate. This was not a problem. It was a political problem, or how to call it, a process problem. And they couldn't upgrade to the newest version. So they had to upgrade the application twice. So from 1.4 to 1.5, and from 1.5 to 2 something. I forgot actually the version. And this was the official path. And they told me this is too expensive. And I say, okay, if you have to do it, then do it. But from code perspective, it looks actually nice. And then I thought about that. I never had to do this with Java E. So we could migrate, servers back and forth. We upgraded, I also learned this the hard way. I remember WebLogic 5 or 6. They had so-called file service. So you could access from WebLogic officially file storage. And they just removed that without any notice in WebLogic 7 or 8, and we called BA back then, hey, our application doesn't run. Yeah, because you didn't use, the official APIs. So this is lesson I learned, So since then, API is always good. So proprietary stuff always a little bit problematic. And we never had the problem since then, really, in Java EE microprofile or my world. And for me, it was actually, I was really stunned that there is no APIs. I thought, that they are using the Spring Boot API and not relying directly on the frameworks. But this was different world, right?
Yeah, but you were talking about the code, which is true. But I went some few customers who've went from JBoss 6 to JBoss 7 to JBoss, and so migrating the runtime. Also, I have some experiences where the customer wastes sometimes months in upgrading runtime, moving from, because it's true that JBoss 6, didn't really exist. So moving from JBoss 5 to JBoss 7 was a big step. In terms of code, if you follow the APIs, it worked. But of course, there was a lot of applications, embedding Spring.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But
external things.
To give you the very simple example, if you have in GlassFish project, what many projects did, they use, the ComSan Jersey dependency. And if you upgraded GlassFish, the dependency was no more there. But this is, of course, but this was not. This is like, then this is no more Java EE using GlassFish straight, right? This is exactly. So, but this was experience. So, next question, because you use Spring. In a typical Spring project, how much of Java EE is used there? So is this like they're using completely different stack, or they are tend to use the Java EE API stuff?
It's really close to zero, and I have a story because
JPA is not there.
JPA is there. It integrates
bean validation,
well with JPA.
bean validation, JMS.
Yeah, bean validation, JMS. Even if they use the JMS template on top of JMS, but it's a nicer API compared to JMS 1.1. It's nicer. But JPA, servlets, bean validation, and so on.
And is at inject? Is at inject used at all?
That was one of the funny stories. I was in front of a bean, and it would implement something. I forgot the name of the interface. So you could do logic before the bean is instantiated, just after, and before it's destruct. So I thought, okay. So I removed the interface, and I annotated the method with post construct and pre-destroy, and it worked.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to see the rest of the team and say, there's, pre-construct, post-construct, and pre-destroy, and everybody was going, "Oh, I don't know, I've never heard it. It's really, it is really supported." So we went to the Spring doc, and yes, it was. We decided not to use it because all the Spring developers were implementing this interface, but there was still auto-wired here and at-inject there. And one day, one guy did a refactoring and removed all the at-inject to auto-wired. And that was the last Java EE annotation I saw on this Spring project.
You know how at-inject happened? Of course you know, right? Who introduced at-inject? Rod Johnson of Spring.
Oh, yes, yeah.
This was Rod Johnson and the crazy Bob Lee, both.
I thought you were talking about the CDI drama.
No, no. So okay, so you spent.
Bob Lee was the
the crazy Bob Lee and Rod Johnson. They can exactly, because this at inject came afterwards. Java 6 had the injection, in, out, and
that was weld, in, out, and
it was Java 6, and they dropped everything.
Sim.
In, out, and there was a bijection and both. Then they ditched everything with at inject from Spring, actually. So at the beginning of Java 6, this was Spring compatible, and then Spring moved to AutoWired, which is fun itself.
But the Java EE8 drama, there was
Java 6 was,
There was the CDI drama too, because when Java EE6 came, there was CDI 1.0.
Mm-hmm.
The spec lead was Gavin King.
Yeah.
And it was an entire drama. And then before releasing Java EE6, which got late because of that, Crazy Bob, Rod Johnson, and forgot who, actually did a fork of
Yeah.
CDI and said, well, we are going to take a singleton at inject, forgot what.
Produces,
Produces not. There's 5 annotations on the at inject. So the JSR, I forgot the name.
330, I think. 330.
330, I think. And CDI on the other side. But the Java E6 story was a CDI 1.0 going, on its own, nearly ready to be published. And there was this fork saying, no, the at inject goes this way, and the CDI stays the other way. That's why Spring implements at inject, Juice implements at inject, but not the rest of CDI. And to be honest, most of the Spring developers use auto-wired.
Yeah.
So
this is what is really strange, because they didn't use their own annotations.
No. So it was a bit of again a political rather than technical issue.
Exactly. So but you found Quarkus somehow. What was your road to Quarkus from Spring?
My road to Quarkus was quite interesting because I was at the time where we could physically meet. I was, organizing Voxed microservices, so a 2 days conference on microservices, and Grame Rocher came to talk about mitronaut, and I was, wow, I love that. So I was doing Spring. I moved into mitronaut, and I was, whoa, that's refreshing. Graal VM was at the beginning of it. It was really something new and refreshing and everything. Emmanuel Bernard was sitting next to me, and he didn't say a single word. A few months later, he announced Quarkus at Devoxx France. So that was 6 months after. And I was like, okay. And because Emmanuel is a friend, I was having a beer with him and said, what, when, how, who? And he said, well, we started working on Quarkus months before Voxed microservice, and I was sitting next to you in the same room listening to Grime Rocher, and I was shaving because he was talking about a framework that Emmanuel didn't know, and this framework was exactly what Quarkus was doing, but I couldn't talk about it. It was still a secret project within Red Hat. So Emmanuel for months was in this state where he could see Micronaut. He was still working on this pet project called Quarkus, and he had the right to announce it months later. And so I was playing with my Micronaut, and Quarkus came, and I thought, hey, that works the same way as Micronaut, but it uses Java EE APIs and microprofile APIs. Exactly. So again, throughout my career, like you, I mostly did one thing because these APIs are portable. Then came Spring, and I learned something new. Then came Micronaut, and I learned something new. But with Quarkus, it was, I can reuse my skills. It's fantastic. So, I proposed Emmanuel Bernard and Clément Escoffier to do a one-day workshop on Quarkus at Vox Microservice last year. So we did a one-day workshop, and then I started to get involved more and more on Quarkus. I did a proof of concept for one customer on Quarkus, and then the lockdown came. I stayed locked down at home with 2 babies, the worst time ever in my life. And so to not depress, I thought, what am I going to do? Write a book.
Okay.
So thanks to the lockdown, you have 2 books now available freely on Quarkus, Understanding Quarkus and Practicing Quarkus. And it's just my very young history on Quarkus, which I discovered it. I realized that I could reuse my skills. I started to play with it. I then did a proof of concept with it at a customer, and then I got locked down. And against depression, I decided to write a book on it.
How to get your books? Download from your page, website, or how to get them?
No, so we did a partnership with Red Hat. So at the moment, they are on the Red Hat developer. So you go there, you look for practicing Quarkus and understanding Quarkus, and you just click on the link. And then so they have, the deal is they sponsored it. They have it for free on their platform for 6 months, and then they will keep it, but I will also take the book back. So from April, it will be on my page and on my brand. But now at the moment, I gave it to Red Hat only.
Now I'm curious, what was the most impressive feature from Quarkus? So if you started with Quarkus, you knew immediately there's something interesting, or what's impressed you the most?
Of course, I would not jump into something just for the Java EE APIs, they implement Java EE, great.
Yeah.
No, what really impressed me was the startup time and the hot reload, which is way better than Spring Boot. So as a developer, I thought, well, that's quite easy. Now, when I use Quarkus, sometimes I type code, I do a typo, I forget a comma or whatever. And because it reloads quickly, I go, why it's not working? Because my code is not even compiling. I'm just there on the IDE and trying stuff, and sometimes my code doesn't even compile because I did a mistake. So that's how fast it goes, how fast it reloads and recompiles everything. So on a development point of view, it's really nice. So I think it was the startup time and what they call the developer joy. And then if you are an oldie like me, you remember compiling your Java class with Java C class path, and you put a huge list of jars, and you compile the code, and it's painful. Then Maven came along. So when GraalVM arrived, I was doing the same thing, compiling code. I was trying to do hello worlds with GraalVM, and it was just a pain, a nightmare. Quarkus, you just go,
minus P native.
Minus P native, and it works. And I was like, wow, same thing for Docker, same thing for Minikube. And I was really, I can reuse my very old skill. It still works. At transactional works, at path works, at entity works. But in a development point of view, it's much nicer and faster. And I have all the brand new tools, GraalVM, Docker, Kubernetes, easily, and I don't have to struggle. So as Emmanuel Bernard always says in his talks, Quarkus is 2 years old, but you already have 10 years of experience out of it.
Yeah, that's really true. Also funny, because my how to call it, excitement about Quarkus was completely different. Red Hat pinged me. I had a chat with a Red Hat engineer, and they told me, okay, something new on the horizon. And I told him I'm completely not interested, because I already saw this whitefly swarm, and this was not a huge improvement. And Thorntail, probably you renamed Thorntail to Microtail or whatever, and then Quarkus arrived, and I said, okay. This is actually one of my first videos, YouTube videos, happened a little bit later. So I was curious what happens behind the scenes. So why it is so hot. So what happens behind the scenes? So I deactivated all the plugins and tried to understand what's going on there. And what I noticed back then, and this was for me like, the absolute moment is, all the microservices with Whitefly, what I actually did all the years, I had one application server and one war, and this was my microservice, right? So in the Whitefly, I had to scan the folder, find the war, and did do some reflection and stuff like that, and read the deployment descriptors. And for me, it was not a big deal, because Whitefly for me was fast enough, and or GlassFish or Payara, I did OpenLiberty, I use actually all these servers. And what I found out that the Quarkus does that at build time. Yeah. If I understood that, I say, okay, this is the future. Because this is the same story as it was before, but I mean, this is the genius, what they did. They found out that they can do it at build time. Yeah. Because then at runtime, there is no reflection, no deployment descriptor parsing. And for me,
everything
it was
is configured.
And now, for me, it means you cannot optimize a lot anymore because this is, the ultimate application. Simple class loading, no reflection. It cannot be any faster than this. And for me, it's okay. This is not the future because not a huge difference from the API perspective, but this is the next generation. I mean, this is incredible. And this is how from then I was hooked on Quarkus because I said, okay, this is not like micro optimization with Thorntail. This is a complete new story, right?
Yeah. I haven't, I have moved from Spring Boot now for a year and a half. I don't know where they are anymore. But if you look at Spring and Java EE, they do exactly the same thing, as you say.
Yeah.
You deploy a war or a jar. When Spring arrived with the make jar not war, which was quite funny. But at the end of it, you start something, and the runtime starts. It introspects everything, creates proxies, configures stuff. It takes a huge amount of time, and then answers back, "I'm ready." And same thing when I discovered technically how Quarkus does it the other way around.
Yeah.
The runtime, when you start, well, everything has been compiled, and the proxy is done, and everything is. It's like, wow, same thing. I was this wow moment going. It's not a Spring competitor. It's not. I do what Java EE or Spring does, but better. No, I do something different.
For me, it is like what the application servers did with Java EE, and now really inverted.
Yep. Yeah, because the very, very first versions of Java EE, there was, the EJB2, the famous EJB2. You had to write your interfaces. You had to write your stubs. You had to write. Of course, there was a bit of reflection.
This is what I mean. What I mean is application servers were built to host multiple wars.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
And therefore, they are so complicated, And Quarkus say, what if there's only one?
Yeah.
And if there is only one, we can optimize everything in different way. So this is, this is really the consequent refactoring for clouds or for single process, microservice actually, right? Or
Spring also did that. Spring Boot was about one jar, one application. But Quarkus took it way further with this build time versus runtime, where everything is shipped. Instead of having a long runtime, a short build time and a long runtime like Java EE or Spring, they just moved things. So at compile time, they do everything, and then it's ready to start. Yeah.
Another interesting runtime you should look at this is Helidon, actually. I don't know whether you had the opportunity to look at this. So I evaluated this a little bit. It's similar to Quarkus, but interestingly, differently. For instance, what they are doing, if you are running Helidon, they include the entire microprofile. So this is not like they have extensions. This is and they focus more on the ultimate performance. So they have everything is reactive, and they're working on and this is interesting. I also chat with the engineers. I use also Helidon not in projects. Quarkus I use in production, and Helidon just evaluation. Really interesting. And they have two modes: microprofile and Java SE mode. And from the beginning, in Helidon, the main difference in Quarkus is at the beginning, Quarkus was really hard to run it from command line interface because it started. And Helidon from the beginning was a library. So you wrote your main method, and then you can launch Helidon. So what I like in both, they don't try to copy each other. So Helidon has complete different philosophy. It's also very fast, very small, also the same GraalVM experience, but it's complete different in details, which I really appreciate. Not like copycats back and forth. So if you can, take a look at Helidon. And what Helidon has right now, command line interface. So there's a REPL. So you can say Helidon create, and it creates. This is what Quarkus will also get in now, or in future. But Helidon already has it, and they created this with GraalVM. So you can download a Go-like library and say Helidon create, or init, I think init, and they have it. So take a look at this. Because it's complete different take, and you can also easily move between Quarkus and Helidon back and forth because both are microprofile in Java E based, right?
Yeah, use the same APIs.
And for you, particularly interesting because if you have WebLogic license, there are some clients who have this still. You can migrate for Helidon and get Helidon support from Oracle.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
this is interesting point. If you have old,
Yep.
WebLogic stuff, you can migrate to Helidon in political correct way, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose that's also what's going to happen in the Red Hat. Customers who use JBoss EAP, maybe they will get, I don't know how it's going to work in the future, but maybe they could get support for Quarkus or something like that. Yeah, interesting times.
Yeah, perfect.
We've seen Java dying every 5 years. We've seen the death of Java EE every couple of years.
Yeah.
Still there and still reinventing
Yeah.
themselves.
So we can summarize, now our podcast. So we learned 20 years ago an API, right? And try not to forget that. And now we just replace the runtimes back and forth. And now we're still happy.
And
Perfect.
APIs haven't moved and changed slowly. Yeah.
Perfect.
And it's still fun.
Antonio, where people can find you on the internet? Do you have a Twitter, blog?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, Agoncal, Agoncal. I have a blog where sometimes less and less, but I like to, post technical articles. And I'm thinking now of maybe doing, how it's fashionable and everybody's locked down at home, doing some YouTube videos like you do.
Yeah.
Just on Quarkus, short things, because sometimes it's easier to, like you do, just be in front of the IDE and type some code rather than writing a long article. I think because I see that writing articles take a lot of time. I write books, so then I have to write articles. And I was thinking of maybe I'll do like you, short things about Quarkus, how to do this, how to do this, how to do that. So maybe one day you'll find me on YouTube, but now just ping me on Twitter if you want to say hello.
Yeah, I would like to invite you back this year so we can chat about Quarkus and whatever. And
I hope we will see each other in Devox Belgium in November 2021.
Yeah, because Java 1 is no more there. So, right?
Nope.
So this is the Devox is the official successor, I would say, right?
And I will think in Devox by November, this bloody virus would have moved on.
Java was always virus-free, more or less, right? So, I mean, we are not that impacted, I would say. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Adam. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Bye.
Bye.